Up next, it's that giant talking stonehead.
Field eyes.
Is there such a thing as a perfect movie? Is there a film out there that does everything, both in terms of its storytelling and on a technical level? I think the answer for most people would almost certainly be no, that there really has never been a perfect movie. Those people all have one thing in common though. They haven't seen Infra-Man. Released in the US in 1976, Infra-Man, also known as the Super Infra-Man, is a Hong Kong action, sci-fi, kung fu monster masterpiece. Everything, and I do mean everything, that this movie does is in service of one thing: pure entertainment. It's an 84-minute assault on your senses, and even the open credits send a message of, "Buckle up, kid, it's about to go down." I'm talking countless explosions, dragon decapitations, and motorcycle finishing moves, and that's barely even scratching the surface on this movie's greatest hits. So what's Infra-Man about? Oh, you want to know what Infra-Man's about. It starts out with a man and a woman and a bunch of singing kids just driving a van through the mountains, and then a dragon flies over them and crashes into the road and then instantly disappears. Then there's a massive earthquake and the road straight up explodes. The lady and the kids get out of the van, but the guy isn't so lucky and he goes barreling down a cliff. Bang! Hard cut to a burning city where these people are dying horrible deaths. Bang! Hard cut to a research center where lots of research has revealed that a volcano has erupted after lying dormant for centuries. Bad news though, because instead of lava, this volcano shot out a fortress shaped like a dragon called Mount Devil, which just so happens to be the house of the film's villain. Oh no! Enter Princess Dragon Mom. I swear to God, that's her real name. So her deal is pretty much like she just wants to kill all people, so she summons this group of goofballs and they immediately start simping and begging to slaughter humanity in her honor. Alright, here's the monster rundown. Everybody's here. We got Hand-Eye Lady, Drill Guy, Plant Guy, Mustache Fire-Breathing Guy, Bug Guy, Hairy Yellow Laser Guy, and a couple of robot guys. Not to mention an army of skeletons with spears that explode when you throw them. Yo, Plant Guy and Kit Fisto from Attack of the Clones should team up for their own movie.
For all of you sci-fi lovers, this spring will be a very exciting time.
Sure will be. The new Star Wars movie will be released, taking you back to the beginning of the saga.
There's only one thing that can stop this crew, and so back at the research center, the lead professor performs a dangerous and painful experiment on this guy, giving him the power to transform into Infra-Man. Infra-Man's packing a serious arsenal, including missiles, fists that shoot off of his arms, laser blasts that light shit on fire, and a kick that causes whatever it hits to explode. Oh, and by the way, he's absolutely unreal at kung fu and acrobatics, too. At this point, I probably don't even have to tell you what the rest of the movie is like. You can already tell. Infra-Man first appears with almost exactly an hour of running time left in the movie, and those 60 minutes are absolute madness, being nearly entirely composed of bonkers monster fight scenes and motorcycle stunts. Someone's always getting their ass kicked, something's always exploding, and someone wearing some type of motorcycle helmet is always on screen. It's like a bus with no brakes. Once this thing gets up to speed, you are not slowing it down. This is the type of movie that looks you straight in the face and says, "Hey buddy, I dare you to even try to keep up." And that warp speed pacing is actually one of the best things the movie has going for it. Because it never lets up, you don't have time to ponder what you're seeing. You aren't going to be checking your phone because you're too busy getting pummeled by this movie's visuals into paying constant attention. If you look away for even a second, you're missing out. It's constant stimulus, cranked up to 11, and before you know it, an hour and a half is gone. I really don't even know where to start after Infra-Man shows up. Honestly, laying down all the details of this movie would really just be doing you a disservice. You just gotta see this shit in its entirety. This thing's a marathon of moments, and what I mean by that is that its plot as a whole isn't that remarkable, but damn if it doesn't have a massive highlight reel. Again, I don't want to give everything away, but we're looking at multiple Hall of Fame monster deaths, a possessed guy execution via fire pit, plenty of handmade miniatures getting destroyed, and fight choreography that manages to be impressive and cheesy at the same time. A good example of this is the fight scene in the boneyard outside of the evil fortress. Drill Guy and the boys taking on an unmorphed Infra-Man and a bunch of normal guys on motorcycles. They're clearly just on a set decorated to look like it's outside, but that didn't stop the filmmakers from getting the bikes in on the action, or from constantly setting off explosions whenever a spear gets thrown or Drill Guy touches anything with his non-drill hand. It's awesome. The shots in this scene tend to last a little longer too before cutting, which is a nice change of pace, and it leads to some interesting visuals that differ from other fight scenes in this film with more cuts. Real quick, while we're talking technique, this movie loves zooms. Doesn't matter if you're going in or out, this movie is always down to zoom. They are usually jarring but predictable at the same time, and I think that they pair well with the off-the-wall content of the film, and that makes them lean towards being more stylish as opposed to just distracting. A zoom in lets you know, hey man, you're gonna want to be in the front row for this, while the outs are more like, whoa chief, you better back the fuck up. Both kind of act as an exclamation point, a way to emphasize what you're seeing. The movie is surprisingly well shot, and there's a good amount of interesting framing, with the filmmakers clearly trying some things with the foreground space. The action is clear and rarely choppy, and like I already said, fight scenes are given room to breathe with some longer takes. That's not to say there isn't some fast-paced editing here, but it never gets to the level of something like Batman Begins, where the speed of the editing and the shot selection ends up giving off a disorienting effect. It's certainly nothing groundbreaking in terms of camera work, but it's more than competent at times, and that serves to complement the imagery, which is clearly this movie's bread and butter. So, how did this powerhouse get made? Well, this gift to humanity came into existence after Shaw Brothers Studios noticed a new trend in the Hong Kong TV market. The Shaw Brothers saw that Japanese tokusatsu series had become popular amongst Hong Kong's young people and were being aired frequently on television to strong ratings, while toys and other merchandise from these shows saw similar success in Hong Kong. So the Shaw Brothers saw an opportunity to capture that market in theaters, thus the plan to bring tokusatsu to the big screen outside of Japan was born. Tokusatsu, as I understand it, is a kind of blanket term that covers all Japanese live-action movies and TV shows in the fantasy, science fiction, and horror genres that make heavy use of special effects. So this includes kaiju movies like the Godzilla series, as well as the superhero series that inspired Infra-Man, stuff like Kamen Rider, Ultraman, and later Super Sentai. That's not to say that tokusatsu necessarily has to be from Japan. I mean, after all, Infra-Man was made in Hong Kong. It's just that the vast majority of stuff in this genre is coming from Japan. Super Sentai is actually the source for most of the fight footage from a little American series you might have heard of called Power Rangers.
Time Force! Time Force! Power Rangers!
If you've ever seen Power Rangers, you've probably realized by now that Infra-Man has a lot in common with that show. While older seasons of Power Rangers are surprisingly entertaining even as an adult, they can't keep pace with Infra-Man, that's for sure. Despite that, it's almost impossible to talk about this movie without bringing up Power Rangers. That really is the only instance of this genre ever breaking into the American mainstream, save for a few Godzilla films. The movie the Shaw Brothers ended up developing would blend many elements of tokusatsu with the wildly popular kung fu genre that was dominant in the 1970s, with stars like Bruce Lee propelling the genre into big box office return territory. Did you know that Bruce Lee is actually in Infra-Man? That's Lee spelt L-E though. Yeah, it's not the real name of the actor, but he adopted it after the real Bruce Lee died in 1973. What was being called a tribute was really just a way to cash in on the name though. There was actually a whole subgenre of kung fu and martial arts movies called Bruceploitation in the years following Lee's death. His movies were so popular that his passing left a massive hole in the market, and so production companies started cranking out movies with different actors impersonating Bruce Lee. It wasn't just this fella. Lots of other actors tried to get their mitts on the money Bruce would have been making. We don't just have Bruce Lee, but also Bruce Lee, Brute Lee, Lee Bruce, and all kinds of other pretenders to the throne. Infra-Man was made using a round-the-clock production schedule because of the demands of the costumes and props, which had to be made in-house or shipped in from older Japanese productions. The movie was shot in exactly 100 days, wrapping filming in April of 1975. A month later, the effects work had been finished and Infra-Man was ready for the world. The world, however, could never be ready for Infra-Man. The Shaw brothers were an absolute hype machine back in the day, and the marketing for this movie was nuts, with ads all over kids' media, including numerous mailing contests, like this one for a coloring contest that allowed for only watercolor. It was all a risk though, as Infra-Man was really the first Hong Kong feature film to be entirely driven by special effects. That didn't stop the Shaw boys from going all out as they threw a huge premiere event at Victoria Park, which included hot air balloons and an appearance by Infra-Man himself. Despite all of that, the movie barely managed to make its money back during its first run in theaters. This is down to two main reasons. One, adults really didn't care, and two, the people that did care could already see similar things for free on TV. Even weeks after its release, Infra-Man was already being slept on. Also, the Shaw brothers included this in their package for the Cannes Film Festival, so that's right. Some way, somehow, this movie played at Cannes. I bet it blew everyone away that year. What won the Palme d'Or in 1975 anyway? Chronicle of the Years of Fire? Ooh, yeah. That's an art house film about Algerian independence, isn't it? A Cannes favorite. I'm not saying Infra-Man was robbed, but... We got the movie in the US in 1976 thanks to prolific horror distributor Joseph Brenner, whose company was famous for eye-grabbing and provocative posters, with Infra-Man being no exception. The movie has always existed as a cult favorite, the best-kept secret at the video store that only those willing to gamble on something extra weird knew about. The internet has kinda changed that though. At the very least, a lot more people are in on secrets like Infra-Man than there used to be. More than anything, Infra-Man is just fun. The best way to watch it is with a bunch of friends who are ready to see something way out there compared to the Hollywood standard. It's cheesy and completely absurd, but that's what sets it apart. It's hard to find a way to wrap Infra-Man up, but I like what Roger Ebert had to say about the movie in his review for the Chicago Sun-Times. He said, "When they stop making movies like Infra-Man, a little light will go out of the world." Right on the money as usual, Roger. The world needs movies like Infra-Man. It should go straight to the top of your watch list. Otherwise, you risk going to your grave having never experienced Infra-Man's particular brand of movie magic.